Thank you. Thank you. Going off that line of questioning on the fair hearing, do you believe that medical necessity should be determined by medical professionals?
Yes, it's a clinical judgment.
So if I understood testimony earlier today, the way the fair hearing process is working, you have medical director from the MCO. Okay. If the FPS, when they get a medical director, I guess medical director, if it's foster care child, like in this situation from DFPS, but we have a lay person over an HHSC.
So the Medicaid CHIP division is not responsible for our fair hearings process, so I'm going to defer to Ms. Ray, since the legal department oversees fair hearings.
That's me. I'm glad we came back to this. You did hear correctly. Our hearing officers are lay people, and they hear fair hearings from all of our programs, including the Medicaid program. Obviously, in the Medicaid program and in the kinds of cases that we were talking about today, the decision very often boils down to whether a service was medically necessary or not. And the question you asked is a question that people ask in a lot of different contexts, including courts where you have a judge who doesn't necessarily have a clinical background hearing a personal injury case or a medical malpractice case. And it is very difficult in that circumstance because what a judge and what our hearing officers often have are competing medical decisions.
Well, but a judge is interpreting law, not creating law. Well, a good...
Yes.
Well, right. But...
And thank you for bringing up the jury, because the jury is a fact finder, not unlike the hearing officer. So they are lay people. There are. I'm not going to give a statistic because I don't know. But in the majority of cases where you do have that competing information on medical necessity, you do have the representative from the MCO. You might also have the treating physician of the client. In the case that we talked about today with the Morris case, you also had the representatives from the home health agency.
Right, but we as a state, why would we not want a medical professional? I mean, you have medical staff, right? We have medical director.
We do have a medical director.
Why in the world would we not want a medical professional representing the state in that fair hearing?
Well, there's a difference between the hearing office...
Or determining medical necessity, I guess.
Yes, representing the state is a different role than the hearing officer
determining
has, yes.
Medical necessity.
Yes. If we want the hearing officer if we want the role of the decider in the fair hearing to be to determine, make a clinical decision of their own, then a clinical decision maker is what we need. If we're looking for a fair and impartial hearing officer to take in information from both sides and make a decision based on the evidence and not substituting their own judgment, then it's a different question.
Maybe I don't understand the process. Is this not a process when the MCO denies, okay, treatment physician orders something, MCO denies it, the foster parent appeals that decision, and it comes to a fair hearing, right?
Correct. Well, yes. Would it be helpful for me to step through the whole process?
Yeah, I'm just trying to decide, are we
hearing?
talking about here a decision on whether or not the denial was correct or not? Is that what the process is?
That is essentially the point of the process, to decide whether or not a denial or reduction of service was appropriate.
And if that is the decision, and it's a decision where we're looking at medical necessity, why would we not want a medical professional as part of that process as opposed to a layperson? I can interpret a procedure, but I can't determine whether or not that denial was based upon a good standard of care.
And there's no question that medical professionals should be a part of that process. I think the question is whether they should be the decision maker in the process.
Can I just ask something? I think that where Representative Roberts may be going is that, and first let me clarify, who is the decision maker at the fair hearing? Who makes the decision?
The hearing officer.
Who is part of HHSC?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think what may be absent here is the patient's physician.
The patient's physician can participate in the fair hearing.
Is that common, or is that?
That was my hesitation earlier. I can't tell you how common it is. I can tell
Are they
you
even
that
made aware of the fair hearing? I mean, you can say they can, but if they don't even know about the hearing, if they're not invited to the hearing, they can't participate in the hearing. I think what Representative Roberts is pointing out is the patient needs not only an advocate, but the person who is recommending, the physician who's recommending or prescribing that treatment, who actually is treating that person, who actually has been taking care of that person, knows their history, has physically examined them, has been with them through the whole process. That person is who seems to be missing from the fair hearing process.
Tag. That plus, I think the final.
That's not how this.
Oh, Madam Chair. Madam.
Dr. Bonin? Are you finished?
I'm good, thanks.
Yes, Representative Roberts.
The final decision, I'm going back to what you just told Dr. Bonin. You indicated the final decision in that appeal decision was made by a layperson at HHSC, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Then why would we not want that person making the final decision to be a medical professional?
To answer that, I'd like to go briefly back to Dr. Bonin's point. And the physician who is treating the client absolutely has a vital role. And the hearing officer and the hearings division at HHSC, in the information that we provide to clients when they request a fair hearing, offers the opportunity for that person to bring whatever evidence and whatever witnesses might be useful to the hearing officer. Now, how often does that happen? I cannot say. I can ask staff if we can have statistics on that, but I do not believe we'll be able to give you a hard number. I can provide some anecdotal evidence. However, that goes to the question that you're asking. We do have the MCO's position. In the best case scenario, we also have the treating physician. We hear from caregivers and family members, and then the layperson, you're correct, does, based on all of the information presented, hopefully some of it from the treating physician and the one on the personal caregivers. All of that information should go to inform the layperson's decision.
But the layperson doesn't have the knowledge base it doesn't matter how many people give their opinion. At the end of the day, a layperson does not have the medical knowledge and basis to make a determination whether or not a denial for medical necessity was fair or not. I mean, you can tell me all day I'm wrong, but I just don't see how that could be the case. And here's what I don't understand. If there's all this if we have a medical director and medical staff, why wouldn't we utilize them? I mean, I just don't understand why there's a hard and fast rule process-wise we use a layperson. And if there's a good reason, I'm happy to hear it.
I think aside from the question about whether that's the right approach or not, the volume is an issue for the number of medical staff that we have. So if the decision was that those I can't recall what the volume of,
In the last 12 months, there were just over 3,800 MCO-related hearing requests.
3,800 hearing requests for denied appeals for medical necessity?
No, not all related to medical necessity and not all related to denials. Some could have been a reduction in services as well.
Yeah, I'm talking things related to medical necessity. If it requires a medical profession to look and make a determination, was the adequate standard of care and a right decision, that's what I'm talking about. If it's somebody that isn't happy because there's not enough providers or whatever, layperson, that's a black and white issue. I'm talking about purely medical necessity.
I do think that we're talking about the process as it is and perhaps not how it should be. And I do think that we're happy to visit this idea. I believe it has a lot of merit and something that the article's really shone a light on, and happy to have these discussions with the legislature and internally.
I'm not even talking about the article. I'm just talking about the rational.
Common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so, okay, thanks.